You're about to witness one of history's most calculated acts of psychological warfare. For 76 days, they didn't just imprison Marie Antoinette. They systematically dismantled her humanity, piece by piece. And it all started with an 8-year-old boy. Forget everything you think you know about the guillotine, the blade that was mercy. What came before was something far darker. They discovered her one vulnerability, and they exploited it with a cruelty that still haunts the historical record today. This is the story of prisoner 280, and I'm going to show you exactly what they did to her. It's July 3rd, 1793, middle of the night, the Temple prison in Paris. You hear boots echoing down stone corridors, heavy, purposeful, getting closer. Marie Antoinette is sleeping beside her 8-year-old son, Louis Charles. Her hand rests on his chest. She hasn't let him out of her sight since they executed his father 6 months ago. The door explodes open. 6 guards flood the room holding a document, an order. They've come for the boy. What happens next will echo through those prison walls for an entire hour. A former queen transforms into something primal, a mother fighting for her child with every ounce of strength she has left. She throws her body against the door. She screams until her voice breaks. She begs them to take her instead. But here's what makes this moment so much worse. This isn't random violence. This isn't chaos. This is calculated. Because the revolutionaries have realized something crucial. They can't break Marie Antoinette with torture, starvation, or humiliation. But they can break her with her own love. And they're about to use her son to destroy her in ways that will make the guillotine feel like an afterthought. Stay with me because what I'm about to reveal gets so much darker than you can imagine. Before we confront the horrors ahead, you need to understand who Marie Antoinette actually was, because the woman they tortured in 1793 was nothing like the caricature the revolutionaries created. She was born Maria Antonia in Vienna, 1755, an Austrian archduchess and the youngest daughter of Empress Maria Theresa. At 14 years old, she was married off to the future King Louis XVI of France. This wasn't love. This was geopolitics. Austria and France needed an alliance, and she was the price. The French court despised her from day one. She was Austrian, which meant she was the enemy. She was young, awkward, and didn't understand French customs. The courtiers mocked her accent, her clothing, her every move. Even her own husband ignored her for years. Their marriage wasn't consummated until 7 years in, a humiliation that became public gossip across Europe. So she did what any isolated young woman might do. She escaped into pleasure. 3%, elaborate hairstyles, expensive gowns, parties at her private retreat, the Petit Trianon. The French people, starving and desperate, saw these extravagances and branded her Madame Deficit. Did she actually say, let them eat cake when told the people had no bread? No, that's propaganda. But it didn't matter. The damage was done. By the time the revolution erupted in 1789, Marie Antoinette had become France's most convenient scapegoat. She wasn't a monster. She was a foreigner, a woman, and a queen. 3 things that made her the perfect target. And when the monarchy fell, the revolutionaries needed someone to blame for centuries of royal excess. They chose her. But here's the crucial detail. By 1793, Marie Antoinette wasn't the frivolous party girl anymore. She was a mother of 4 who'd watched her oldest son die of tuberculosis at age 7. She'd seen her husband dragged to the guillotine. She'd spent months locked in the Temple prison with her surviving children, knowing any day could be their last. She'd already lost everything: her crown, her freedom, her husband, her country. The revolutionaries were about to teach her that she could still lose more. Let me paint you a picture of the Temple prison, because this place was designed to break people long before they ever reached the guillotine. It was a medieval fortress in Paris, originally built by the Knights Templar. Dark, damp, oppressive. After King Louis XVI was executed in January 1793, Marie Antoinette and her two surviving children, 14-year-old Marita and 8-year-old Louis Charles, were locked in a tower, guarded day and night. At first, they were kept together. Marie Antoinette tried to maintain some semblance of normal life for her children. She taught them lessons. She prayed with them. She held them close at night when the sounds of revolutionary mobs echoed through the streets outside. But the guards were watching, always watching, taking notes, reporting back to the Committee of Public Safety, the revolutionary government that now controlled France. And they noticed something. Marie Antoinette could endure anything except threats to her children. So they started experimenting with psychological torture. First, they restricted access to the children's rooms, forcing Marie Antoinette to beg for permission to see her own son and daughter. Then they installed additional guards inside their quarters, men who sat in the corner staring, recording everything, every conversation, every moment of affection, every tear. The children weren't allowed to speak German, their mother's native language. They had to use French exclusively, which meant even their private family moments were monitored and controlled by the state. Marie Antoinette started to unravel. Her hair, which had been light brown, began turning white from stress, a condition called Marie Antoinette syndrome, which is actually a real medical phenomenon. She stopped eating. She developed hemorrhaging that she tried desperately to hide from the guards. But she held on, because she still had her children. The revolutionaries knew they needed to take that away from her. July 3rd, 1793, the date that would define Marie Antoinette's final torment. Let me walk you through what happened that night, because the primary sources, the actual testimony of people who were there, are absolutely devastating. It's around 10 p.m. Marie Antoinette has just put 8-year-old Louis Charles to bed. He's sleeping in the same room. She hasn't let him out of her sight since his father's execution. Her daughter, Marie TZ, and her sister-in-law, Madame Elizabeth, are in adjacent rooms. Then they hear it. Boots. Multiple men coming up the tower stairs. The door bangs open. 6 municipal guards, led by a man carrying an official decree from the Committee of Public Safety. They've come to take Louis Charles away. He's to be re-educated by the Republic, separated from his mother's corrupting influence. Marita Thérèse later wrote about this moment in her memoir. She described how her mother went from composed to feral in an instant. Marie Antoinette threw herself between the guards and her sleeping son. She grabbed Louis Charles and held him so tightly that he woke up crying, confused. And then she started screaming. Not the elegant objections of a former queen, raw, animalistic screaming. "You will not take him. You will have to kill me first. He is just a child." The guards tried to reason with her. The order came from the highest authority. She had no choice. She didn't care. For 1 full hour, 60 minutes, she physically blocked the doorway, holding her son, refusing to let them pass. The guards threatened her. They threatened the boy. They threatened her daughter. They said if she didn't comply, They would use force and people would get hurt. Marie Antoinette kept fighting. Finally, Madame Elizabeth begged her sister-in-law to stop. The boy was sobbing, terrified. Marita was hysterical, and the guards were getting violent. Marie Antoinette's resistance broke. She kissed Louis Charles one final time. She whispered something in his ear. We'll never know what. And then she watched as 6 grown men dragged her 8-year-old son down the tower stairs, his screams echoing until they faded into silence. She collapsed on the floor and didn't move for hours. But here's where it gets truly evil. The revolutionaries didn't just take her son. They gave him to a man named Antoine Seong, a radical cobbler specifically chosen to destroy the boy. And Simon's methods were horrifying. Louis Charles was locked in a dark, windowless room. He was forced to wear a red revolutionary cap and sing anti-monarchist songs. He was taught to curse his mother, to call her vile names, to repeat accusations of treason and conspiracy. And when he refused, Simon beat him, starved him, kept him in isolation until the boy's spirit broke. Within weeks, Louis Charles was repeating everything they told him to say, including accusations so monstrous, so vile, that they would be weaponized against his mother in the most horrifying way possible. Marie Antoinette didn't know the details, but she knew her son was suffering, and there was nothing she could do to save him. That's when they moved her to the concierge. On August 1st, 1793, less than a month after they took her son, guards burst into Marionnette's room in the Temple prison at 2 a.m. No explanation, no warning, just an order. You're being transferred. They separated her from her daughter and sister-in-law. She begged to say goodbye. They refused. They dragged her down the tower stairs, threw her in a carriage, and drove her through the dark Paris streets to a place called the Conciergerie. If you know anything about the French Revolution, you know this name. The Conciergerie was called the antechamber to the guillotine. It's where prisoners went in their final days before execution. Marionnette wasn't just being moved, she was being prepared for death. But the revolutionaries wanted to make those final days as psychologically devastating as possible. She was assigned prisoner number 280. Not the former queen, not even her name, just a number. Her cell was tiny, about 12 feet by 8 feet. The walls were damp stone covered in mold. There was a thin straw mattress, a wooden table, 2 chairs, and a chamber pot. A single candle for light. No windows, just the suffocating darkness of the medieval dungeon. And here's the truly insidious part. They gave her a privacy screen. A folding screen so she could change clothes or use the chamber pot in privacy. Sounds humane, right? Wrong. The privacy screen was theater, because inside that cell at all times were 2 armed guards. They sat in the corner and watched her every single moment. When she ate, when she slept, when she changed her clothes behind that useless screen, when she used the chamber pot, when she prayed, when she cried. Constant, unblinking surveillance. This isn't about security. She was a middle-aged woman in failing health, locked in a dungeon. This was psychological torture designed to strip away her last shred of dignity and privacy. Historical accounts describe how Marionnette tried to maintain her composure. She would sit for hours staring at the wall, her face completely blank. The guards reported that she barely spoke, barely moved, barely ate. But at night, when she thought they couldn't see in the candlelight, they heard her crying, whispering her son's name, Louis Charles, Louis Charles, over and over. She developed severe hemorrhaging, likely uterine cancer or complications from the stress. She bled through her clothes and had to ask the guards for rags, a humiliation she endured in front of men who stared at her without mercy. Her hair, now completely white, started falling out in clumps. She was 37 years old. She looked 60. And then came the trial. October 14th, 1793. She poured every ounce of her remaining love into that final letter, asking forgiveness and leaving her children in God's hands. She signed it simply, Marie Antoinette. But the letter never reached her family. It was confiscated, hidden away, and lost to silence for decades. October 16th, 1793, the day of her execution. The guards entered her cell and ordered her to prepare. Her mourning gown was stripped away. She was forced into a plain white chemise, the uniform of the condemned. Her hair, now brittle and white, was hacked off without care. The rope binding her wrists cut into her skin. Dragged into the courtyard, she expected a closed carriage like her husband's. Instead, a tumbril used for corpses. As she rode through Paris, thousands jeered, spit, screamed. But she sat upright, unflinching. Jacques-Louis David sketched her as she passed. His drawing captured not a queen, but a human being hollowed by suffering. After an hour of humiliation, the tumbril reached the scaffold. The crowd roared as she climbed the steps. Her legs trembled, but her posture never broke. She faced death with the calm of someone who had already lost everything. Then, in her final seconds, she stepped on the executioner's foot. She turned to him and whispered, "Pardon me, sir. I did not mean to do it." It was the last act of grace from a woman stripped of all humanity, but never of her manners. Seconds later, the blade fell. The revolutionaries believed they had destroyed the monster they created, but they had only revealed the truth. Marie Antoinette endured starvation, humiliation, isolation, and the weaponization of her own child. Yet she never surrendered her dignity. They tried to reduce her to a number, prisoner 280, but her courage outlived every accusation. They wanted her remembered as the widow Capet. History remembers a mother fighting for her children. They wanted her to die in disgrace. Instead, she died with grace they could not destroy. Her final letter, lost in archives, spoke more truth than any tribunal. It revealed a woman who felt fear, but chose courage. Marie Antoinette's story is not one of royalty. It is one of humanity surviving unimaginable cruelty. And after 76 days of relentless psychological warfare, she left behind a final lesson. Grace is the last freedom they can never take.